So let's talk about where's your thyroid? What is it, right? So the thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland that sits in the front of your neck, and it produces hormones that, as we talked about before, regulate digestion, our energy metabolism, and also will influence our mood. And in terms of, so they'll affect our weight, they'll affect our energy levels. It can have repercussive effects. And imbalances, as we talked about, so imbalances in thyroid hormones can cause, you can either have an underactive or overactive thyroid. And as I said, hypothyroidism is the most common thyroid disorder, and it's thought to affect about 6 to 10% of women at any one time. Its prevalence does rise with age, and up to a quarter of women over the age of 65 might be affected. And the hormones that are behind the scenes, so talking about thyroxine, T4 and T3. So spot the symptoms. So in most cases, hormones are to blame for tiredness. And when our thyroid gland is underactive, it fails to produce enough thyroxine. And that particular hormone, thyroxine in particular, I should say. And it can be responsible for symptoms like weight gain, depression, and that feeling of constant fatigue. So feeling cold is another symptom. Poor concentration and thinning hair are also symptoms. It doesn't mean that if you have some of those symptoms, that's thyroid issues, but it's definitely, if you do have a cluster of those symptoms, it is worth getting them checked out. Or if you've suspected that there might be something in the background, definitely worth getting it checked. I should also point out as well, we'll talk about this in a second, that our diet definitely does play a role in how good we feel, in our ability to lose weight, in our ability to feel better. But it is good if you suspect that these might be a challenge, then definitely head to your GP for some investigation. So if you are struggling with low energy levels, definitely, like I said, speak to your GP and get your thyroid levels tested. In some cases of hypothyroidism, you may need to go on a thyroxine medication because they're needed to replace thyroid hormones. But just talking about thyroid health, the two nutrients that are most important for thyroid health are iodine and selenium. So good sources of iodine are things like fish, eggs, seaweed. Black tea is also a good source of iodine. Cheese is another one. So there's a big tick for our cheese lovers in the group. Fortified bread is another one. So most bread, you'll see it's by a couple of years ago a mandatory food law that unless your bread was organic, that it must be fortified with iodized salt. So it must use iodized salt in bread. Not that I'm promoting bread, but of course, if you enjoy a slice or two here or there, it is a good source of iodine there. Of course, if you'd prefer to skip on the bread and just go for the fortified salt, I would definitely recommend whenever you are choosing your table salt, yes, pink salt has its place, but often a lot of those minerals, you don't have enough pink salt to make it worth its while. Just my personal opinion. So whenever I'm choosing salt, I'm usually choosing an iodized rock salt. That's usually what I choose, because that way you're going to use a bit of salt in your cooking and it'll just keep your iodine levels topped up, coming from someone who doesn't eat a lot of bread, and that's how I choose to get my iodine. And good sources of selenium include things like Brazil nuts. So 2 Brazil nuts contain enough selenium for your daily requirements. Sardines are another good source of selenium. Prawns, eggs, and lean red meat are also really good sources of selenium. And of course, if you'd rather just kind of take a bit of a blanket approach, a really good multivitamin that's highly absorbable is going to be a good one to just provide a bit of a safety net for all of the above.